Hello everyone! My name is Kaela and my partner you will see later on in this video is Jocelyn. Today we're going to be talking about the exciting facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports. When someone thinks about sports, their minds either turn to a favorite sport, or maybe a sport they've seen on TV or played, or maybe a sport they wish they would have played. Well, sports are much more than that. Sports serve as an end in itself. Sports help individuals with disabilities to feel a sense of empowerment. Let's take a look at the definition of sports. According to the textbook Facilitation Techniques and Recreational Therapy by John Datillo and Alexis McKenney, sports are defined as competitive physical activities that are performed for pleasure and require physical effort and are played according to fixed rules. There are three levels of physical activity. Let's take a look at what those physical activities are. They are recreational sport, competitive sports, and elite sports. The first, recreational sports, are sports that are engaged primarily for fun and health. An example of recreational sports would be basketball or baseball at the park. The second level is competitive sports, which involves performance standards and conflicting conditions. Example of competitive sports would be college basketball or college volleyball. The third level is elite sports, which is limited to people who compete in top levels of sporting competitions. An example of that would be people in the NBA, NFL, and Olympics. Stay tuned. We'll be talking about the history, description, and purpose of the facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports. I want to talk about the history and background of the facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports. The history of sports is broken down into three categories: organization, legislation, and specific sports. The first category is organizations. In 1968, the Special Olympics International was formed. The Special Olympics International is a program that offers competitive sporting events that have been modified to assist individuals with disabilities. The Special Olympics also includes research into preventing mental disabilities and improvement of how people treat and perceive individuals with disabilities. Another committee is the International Paralympic Committee, which governs the Paralympic Games. The Paralympic Games are held at the same time as the Olympics and have shared the same city as the Olympics. The second category is legislation. During the 1960s, the civil rights movement stretched to include the rights of people with disabilities. Legislation's purpose was to alleviate some existing barriers. Some legislative acts include Rehabilitation Act, Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, and the Americans with Disability Act of 1990. The last of the three categories is specific sports. Basketball, golf, and tennis are the three specific sports that individuals with disabilities participate in. As basketball's popularity grew, the growth of basketball for individuals with disabilities also expanded. Wheelchair basketball began in 1946 and today is one of the most popular sports played in Paralympics. Wheelchair basketball is one of the few sports played on the international basis. The second specific sport is golf. The ADA and the Association of Disabled American Golfers, ADAG, have been increasing population participation in golf. The popularity of golf has led to more golfers with disabilities to participate. The last is tennis. In 1981, the wheelchair tennis tournament was created, which consisted of championship tournaments. The tennis championship event draws over 300 plus players each year. All three of these specific sports are played in the Paralympics. Stay tuned so you can hear about the description of the facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports. I'm going to be talking about the description of the facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports. Sports are often generally of equal difficulty and rigor for athletes without disabilities. Most cases, modifications are limited to only individuals with specific disabilities. The description of sports is grouped into three categories: sports for people with physical limitations, sports for people with sensory limitations, and sports for people with cognitive limitations. The first is physical limitations, which are sports for people with physical disabilities. Majority of sports played by participants who have physical limitations are individuals who use wheelchairs. Participants use their wheelchairs in sports like basketball, rugby, racquetball, and tennis, softball, and archery. The second is sports for people with sensory limitations. Sports created for individuals who are deaf are one of the oldest sports for people with disabilities. These sports include a variety of integrated and modified sports. Among some sports that require little to no modifications are wrestling and weightlifting. The last sport is for people with cognitive limitations. Participants with cognitive limitations are paired with an individual without a disability. The Special Olympics International is a well-known segregated sports program for developmental disabilities. Modifications that are necessary are made uniquely for individuals with cognitive disabilities. What is the purpose of this facilitation technique? Researchers have found that individuals with disabilities who participate in sports have benefited through social interaction. Another purpose for therapeutic use of sports is it maintains physical fitness and gives opportunity for participants with disabilities to compete in sports, whether it be recreational or elite, and it also improves individuals' self-esteem. The facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports, gives individuals with disabilities a chance to just enjoy sports. Let's hear what Jocelyn has to say more about the facilitation technique, therapeutic use of sports.
Hey everyone, my name is Jocelyn. According to the Foundation of Therapeutic Recreation textbook written by Robertson and Long, some benefits of exercise include improved cardiovascular fitness, improved strength, increased bone density, decreased incidences of connective tissue disorders, and improved mood. Because of these benefits, adaptive sports are common and effective interventions used by rec therapy specialists, always considering the client's interests and abilities as well as creativity in order to facilitate active participation. Individuals with disabilities are likely to develop secondary conditions if they live a sedentary life, so this is why physical activity is really important, and one way to facilitate this would be through the use of sports. The textbook quotes, "One of the component goals is to promote the health of people with disabilities, to prevent secondary conditions, and eliminate disparities between people with and without disabilities. And ultimately, the CTRS can motivate, educate, and empower people with disabilities to be physically active to the best of their abilities." Kaela and I chose a volleyball toss activity. An activity involving a ball toss can be effective for many populations. For example, a fun game of toss can encourage an individual with obesity to move around and improve their physical activity. Having a sedentary lifestyle is an area for common concern for these individuals. While increasing their physical activity, they are also increasing their cardiovascular health. Poor cardiovascular endurance limits their ability to engage in physical activities, which is why we chose a sport which is simple and can be easily adapted to a faster or slower pace. Also, according to Porter's recreational therapy for specific diagnoses and conditions, it's important to promote activity, fitness, and stretching with individuals with cerebral palsy in order to maintain muscle strength and endurance. The action of tossing the ball can aid in their gross motor skills in their arms, and stretching out their arms to catch the ball can help with muscle spasticity. This activity, which involves exercise and stretching movements, can improve all aspects of these individuals' physical fitness, and including muscle strength, flexibility, increased range of motion, and hand-eye coordination. An individual with anxiety can also benefit from the concentration of having to catch the ball and toss it to a target because it can temporarily clear their mind. The game can be adapted to have a smaller ball in order to require more focus, and the activity can also be facilitated as a self-toss activity so that the individual can use that as a technique to clear their mind.
Hey everyone, this is myself, Kaela, and Jocelyn, and we're going to be showing you the therapeutic use of sports by showing you a game of tap volleyball. Stay tuned.
So we've adapted the volleyball to this bigger beach ball in order for individuals who lack hand-eye coordination and in order for them to have a better grip on the ball.
They're showing us now tap volleyball. This activity is actually adapted for individuals who are obese. Right now, for hand-eye coordination, they're holding the ball, then tapping, and then they're going to show us a more advanced when they get the hang of this activity, just tapping it back and forth. Now we're going to interview one of our participants. So, how did you enjoy the activity, tap volleyball?
I really enjoyed it because while the activity was simple, it requires some challenging movements that maybe sometimes the populations are not used to. I also liked the fact that there was room for improvement, whereas I started catching the ball and then tossing, and as I got better, I could go straight to tapping. So
While the activity can be performed standing, we had the participants toss the ball while being seated in order to allow individuals with obesity to participate in an activity that wouldn't bear so much weight on their legs and knees. Having to have their hands raised to catch the ball and toss it, the individuals are working on their muscle strength and endurance, and having a bigger ball will make it easier for them to catch if their weight affects their range of motion. Starting the activity by having them catch the ball first will give you a good idea on their level of ability. As you watch them progress, you can have them skip the catch and continue tossing the ball back and forth. You can also make it fun by giving them a goal such as not letting the ball touch the floor in 10 touches. Because obesity can affect children as well, we suggest a fun, colorful ball in case of facilitating this activity with children.